Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? This is my umpteenth attempt to record this video. I keep having audio problems. But on the plus side, I've actually got a few nickels to rub together from this whole YouTube ordeal, and I'm working on upgrading my channel tech. So stand by for slightly improved audio recording quality, should it all go according to plan. Alright, Reacher. Meant to get this video out last week, and I talked about it with Brett Kane on the Ironside podcast when we had our session a few days ago. It's a series about a guy, an ex-military drifter, who is a drifter by choice. It's not like one of those he's struggling with an injury or PTSD or something. Like, he doesn't want attachments or burdens or anything. And since he was born overseas and did most of his service overseas, now that he's out of the service and in his late 30s, he's just bumming around and checking out different towns and cities and seeing the sights and getting familiar with the country that he served but never really knew. There's the TV show on Amazon, which has been really good. The first season was awesome. I'm partway through the second season, and I'm enjoying it immensely. There were also those movies with Tom Cruise back in the mid-2010s that, they were okay for what they were, but from what I've read of the series, they weren't all that similar to it. There's the fact that Tom Cruise is way smaller than Reacher in the books, and I don't know if the stories from those two movies are, all that faithful to individual stories from the books. I just know that they were fine for what they were, but I'm enjoying the books and the show a lot better. The first book, The Killing Floor, that's what the first season of the show was based on, and the show follows that one pretty faithfully. It's the first real, adventure, the first look at him, and it's written in first person. The subsequent books were not, and I don't know if he ever goes back to that first person perspective. I tend to enjoy first person. I know a lot of people get hung up on it. It gives you some proximity and some intimacy with your main character that helps you to really internalize what they're all about. But some of the stories that come along later, you really need to be outside of his head and seeing things happening elsewhere to get a full perspective of what's going on. And it lends itself better to this kind of story. In Killing Floor, Reacher, heard about this small town in Georgia that his brother told him about once, where a blues singer died in mysterious circumstances. He goes and checks it out, and while he's there, he gets arrested for a random, unsolved murder. And, through his wits, we get an introduction to, what his background is, the fact that he was an investigator for the military, so he knows how to snoop around a murder scene and try to solve it. He ends up working with the local PD to solve the case, and he's especially invested when he realizes that the dead body was his brother, who worked for in the book it was the Secret Service. I think in the show they said it was the DHS. This is where a working knowledge of the book's publication year and the show's production year comes into play. The first book came out in 1997. The first season of the show was made 25 years later. And when the book came out, the Department of Homeland Security did not exist. That was created in direct response to 9/11. So, while Joe Reacher is out investigating, counterfeit money schemes, he's doing so under the direction of the Secret Service, I want to say, in the first book. But I'm pretty sure it's DHS in the show. So, Jack wants to solve his brother Joe's murder, and he starts pulling at threads and finding weirder and weirder things at every turn, until finally he discovers that all of these pieces were part of a larger counterfeit money scheme to funnel money out of the United States and into South America to Venezuelan drug cartels. And that's pretty much the way that it went in the show too. The second book is not what the second season of the show is based on. That's book 10 or 11 from what I understand, from what people who have read the whole series have told me. And I think that's good. The plot in the second book deals with a bunch of Christian white nationalist separatists in the Mountain West that want to break off from the United States and become their own country. And groups like that historically do exist. Present day they exist. And it can be kind of tiring in the current pop culture climate, just because that's the kind of villain that's lurking around every corner and every TV show and movie. It's the white supremacists, the right-wingers, the whatever. I don't expect that modern day TV writers would handle that with a deft hand as needed. Although from what I understand, the author Lee Child is involved with the writing and the production, or at least some kind of oversight into the show. So he's keeping it from being steered in that dumb direction. He's like, no, let's tell the stories that I've been telling that have been popular with readers for 25 years. And so, it was well executed in this book. It starts out with Reacher walking along, and he bumps into this lady who's got a hospital cane as she's leaving the dry cleaners and picking up her dry cleaning. And as he's helping her, suddenly she gets held up by these guys that throw her into a van. And since Reacher is there, they don't want to kill him and leave him for dead. They throw him into the van, handcuff him to her, and suddenly he's caught up in this plot. And he's got to figure out who she is, why she's valuable, why these guys are wanting to kidnap her. And he starts using his special investigator skills to help solve the case and save the girl. This is where the rhythm and the formula of the Reacher series really gets established. He gets pulled into something that he really had no intention of being a part of, but he's got an emotional reason for staying connected to it. Excuse me. There's a beautiful woman, they get involved, they usually have sex, and then he solves the case, and he gets back to drifting and doing his hobo thing. In this case, the female is not only the daughter of SecDef, but the goddaughter of the president. And so they want to ransom her, or at least use her as a political hostage to keep the government from coming in and trying to invade as they declare independence from the United States. I do like the fact that since this was a late 90s book, he factors in what were then current events into the government's decision making as to whether they want to get boots on the ground and invade and make a whole mess of this thing, because this was only a few short years after the Ruby Ridge, Idaho incident and the Waco, Texas incident, where the government solved these exclusionary separatist issues by just going in and killing a bunch of people and washing their hands of it. And they have to factor that in and say, okay, well, if we do this a third time in a decade, what impact is this going to have on the populace at large? We already know that there's X amount of gun owners in the country, and if X percentage of those gun owners suddenly decide to take up arms against the government because they see the government going in and killing people that are politically opposed to them, what's that going to do? We've got to be very careful about how we handle this. I think it was a mature and well-reasoned approach to an issue that can, in pop culture terms, be very hot button. So that was a good execution. The second book was called Die Trying. The third book was called Tripwire. And to date, at least out of the ones that I've read, it's got the creepiest villain out of all of them. Lee Child likes to lean into this thing that he does in all three of the books so far, where there's like a threatened rape scene, we'll say, where, I'm probably going to get deboosted on YouTube for just saying that word in the video, but it is what it is. Where the villain is on the cusp of assaulting and violating, a character, and then gets interrupted. Those are never comfortable to read. Not that they're intended to be, but whenever they pop up, I'm like, frick, it's this again. Skip ahead a couple seconds on the audiobooks as I'm listening to them at work. Understand that, okay, it's going to be done for this just to establish what a POS the villain is. Okay, it's established. Let's move on to the next part. That's my preference for scenes of those kinds. But, you get through it, and, you start to pull at the threads of the overall story. In that third one, Tripwire, my only knock against it is that there was a plot twist that was set up that I felt like I saw coming from about the halfway point of the book. And, Reacher starts beating himself up for missing something, and I was like, no, I can tell that Child is setting this up so that, Reacher didn't miss something. He was right all along, and that's going to be part of the overall plot twist. And then it played out kind of exactly as the way that you foresee it coming. I don't think that it was poorly done or done stupidly. Maybe it's just a result of, I've read a lot of thrillers, I've read a lot of books, and I've seen a lot of TV shows where they try to do this sort of thing and disguise the play ahead of time, but they don't get it done exactly the way that they think they do. It was still an excellent book, an excellent thriller. and I've enjoyed them. I'm heading up. I'm heading into the fourth book soon, but I've got a lot of other things that I need to read in January before I get to that. So while I do plan on reading the whole series this year, I mean, because I can, 3 of them, there's 25 of them left. I've just got to average, 2 and change per month. If I have a couple of more months where I read 3 of them, and then do 2 a month, I can finish the whole series by December. Which, hey, I work 50 plus hours a week. If I'm by myself all that time, it's not hard to plow through an audiobook like that. So, I'm enjoying them. Content-wise, it's not as graphic as the TV show is, as far as language and all that. The violence and the action and stuff is still there, but that hits different in print versus when you're actually seeing it depicted on TV. So I know my audience is broad when it comes to content tolerance, so I just like to give a bit of a heads up on that. So it's there, it's part of the story, but he doesn't rely on it too much as a crutch to establish the gruesome tone of it all. But like I said, I'm interested in seeing where it goes from here, especially because for the next couple of months, I'm the same age as Reacher is in the early books. Makes it kind of easy to identify with the guy, even if I'm not a lonely drifter measuring 6'5" and with a ton of muscle on my frame and going through women like candy. He doesn't want a house or a family. I have both of those things, and I quite enjoy them. Nevertheless, it's fun to imagine myself as this big tough dude who goes around solving problems with my largeness. Anyway, that's it for now. I haven't really done this before, but I'm going to start emphasizing it from here on out. If you guys are enjoying the channel and you want to support it, easiest way to do that is to click like and subscribe and all that. If you were ever inclined to support it monetarily, I do have a Substack where I post book reviews and report on what I've been reading. crackerstack.substack.com. The link is down below in the video description. You can become a supporter. You can pay a couple of dollars a month. I think $5 is the minimum. I wasn't able to set it any lower than that. I do, very fortunately, have 2 subscribers who just pay for the whole year up front. You get a discount if you do that. And that's the kind of stuff that will continue to help me reinvest into the channel, buy some better tech, get a battery backup, get a better camera, and you'll get the kind of things that I need so that I can record better videos out in my shop instead of just recording sketchy audio out in my car. But if you don't want to, or if you're not in a position to, pay for some random channel on YouTube, just watching the videos, sharing and liking, all that stuff is a huge help. I got monetized last year, and I'm finally in a position to buy a couple of accessories to improve it, to level up, and I want to keep doing that. I don't have it as my goal to ever do, YouTube full-time. I want to be a novelist full-time, but if I could replace a significant chunk of my income with it, that would be fantastic. And I owe it to you guys who have subscribed and who are watching and who are making this channel a success for doing so. So thank you. Appreciate you watching this far. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.